Hi, everybody. This is Elenbaas from Nightlight Astrology, and these are your Sun and Rising sign horoscopes for the month of November 2019. So in this video, I'm taking a look at the fire signs. We're going to look at the horoscopes for Aries Sun and Aries Rising, Leo Sun and Leo Rising, and Sagittarius Sun and Sagittarius Rising. So let's go ahead and start off. We're going to start with Aries. And this month, we have to begin with the recent new moon that happened at the end of October, October 27th, which fell in the sign of Scorpio in an opposition with the planet Uranus. So for you, this happened in your 8th house opposite Uranus in your 2nd house. Now, these are the two houses that are traditionally associated with money. Money and resources, material resources, even things like food and diet and things that you own or possess. And the 8th house is also a house that has to do with debts, shared assets or resources, wealth that comes from other people or sometimes through different kinds of misfortune. Also, the wealth or resources of a spouse or partner. The 8th house is also a place of penalties around money. So the two houses being activated this month just tells us that through this new moon, the dynamic tension between the new moon and Uranus, there is an upheaval taking place around money and finances. There are changes happening in relationships around money and finances. You are getting rid of things, buying or selling things, concerned about income and expenditures. These are some of the core areas of concern for Aries this month. That can even have to do with things like investing or investment strategies, changes to your income at work. Uranus is creating that need for dynamic transformation right now. And so, it might also be some kind of creative change if you have your own business or something like that. Okay, so that's part one. Now, there's a bunch of stuff happening in Scorpio and Taurus that we need to look at. For example, on November 1st, Mercury has turned retrograde in the sign of Scorpio. And so you've got 3 weeks all the way up until the 21st of November when Mercury turns direct, where that process of mercurial revision that happens usually like 3 times a year is taking place again. This time, the mercurial revision, if you've been around astrology enough, you know Mercury retrogrades happen quite a bit. Mercury retrograde in the 8th house is a time to reflect on and explore debts from the past, emotional debts, karmic debts from the past in general. And also the question about shared responsibilities in relationships, as well as what people are what they are in possession of, and how it should or shouldn't help us. What is codependent and what is not codependent. These are the kinds of things that might be occupying your mind this month. You may also see changes to a spouse or partner's income or some kind of shift to a financial strategy. Even refinancing a loan could come through at a time like this. So that's the Mercury retrograde. Now, when we push forward to the 12th, you're going to get a full moon in, oops, let me shift that back so we've got our Aries rising. On the 12th, you're going to get a full moon in Taurus in your 2nd house. That shifts out of the 8th house emphasis and brings through an exalted moon in Taurus, a planet that indicates things that are pleasing, things that are things that make us happy, things that grant good, that are generally granting good fortune. So it's a pretty good full moon in your 2nd house of finances. May take the shift off from the exploration of some more tangled affairs, usually involving other people and money in the 8th house. So watch for that around the 12th. The other thing that's coming through is later in the month, you get up to November 21st, Mercury turns direct. Things might start to straighten out there, getting a little bit of a feeling of maybe breaking through with something around these topics we've been exploring with money. But then look at this, on the 24th, this is the 23rd, but right on the next day, on the 24th, Mars opposes Uranus from the 8th to 2nd house. Mars-Uranus oppositions are that moment where you're like, screw it, I'm doing it. I'm going to do that thing. I'm going to create that change, and I'm doing it right now, and I can't wait any longer. And it might be kind of dramatic and intense, and there might be this feeling of defiance or rebelliousness, needing to kind of push through opposition. Be careful of that. It can be a little destructive or reckless. But, if you've been patient, if you're being careful, this energy could be the momentum that you need to make some kind of breakthrough, especially again around money, finances, debts, issues around cooperation or what we should share and what we shouldn't share in relationships. So that's your Taurus Scorpio energy for the month. Let's go back to the very beginning of the month, because at the very start of November, there is about 5 days worth of a square between the planets Mars. Oops, no, we are totally messed up. Here we go. Your ruling planet, Mars, in the 7th house of relationships, moving through a square to Pluto in the 10th house of career. Now, the 10th house is actually broader than career. It was originally called praxis or karma, and just indicates the stuff that we do, the stuff that we spend our time with. So not everybody's working all the time, but whatever you are preoccupied with, whatever is demanding your time and energy and attention, that's the 10th house. For a lot of people, that's their career or their profession. But at any rate, Mars in the 7th house, place of relationships, pressing into transformative, explosive, cathartic, sometimes dark Pluto in the career house. You're looking at the very most general level, relationships and career being the highlight of the first 5 days of the month. Also, the potential for confrontation, power struggle, diplomatic challenges. That's Mars in Libra, the god of war, in the sign of balance and justice, squaring Pluto. Could there also be conflicts in the workplace, ethical situations that you're dealing with? Could be a very productive energy in terms of working with others toward a shared goal or project. Could also just give you that extra push to get something done, but watch for conflicts around relationships or in the workplace at that time as well. Now, when we go forward, the next piece of the month, which is honestly a lot more uplifting, is we're going to look at the planet Venus, because Venus is making a square from the 11th of November through the 16th to Neptune in Pisces. This is happening between your 9th and 12th house. First of all, this is definitely pressing the spiritual buttons. This is like, let's get into spiritual spaceship and take off kind of energy, because Neptune and Venus represent all that is beautiful, artistic, but also formless, intangible, imaginative, transcendental, as well as sensual and romantic. But this is happening between the 9th and 12th houses. These houses have a lot to do with our beliefs, with religion and spirituality, with learning, with institutes of higher education, as well as the exploration of our shadows, of the need for isolation, of loneliness, of yearning for something more than this world has, sometimes getting into escapist tendencies. So you want to be careful that you're not swept up in the kind of romantic haze of this transit, but otherwise, it should be inspiring and may provide you with a kind of romantic spiritual interlude, or even, 9th house, a place of travel, long journeys abroad, or journeys to distant places, I should say, or also maybe some need to be alone, to find, the beauty, the sublime beauty of the ocean sitting by yourself. So it's interesting. Venus probably presses the relationship button a little bit too here, looking at beliefs in your relationships. Okay, so that's between the 11th and the 16th. Now, when we move into the latter part of, right around the 16th, the late part of the Venus-Neptune transit, there's also, very briefly, but it's palpable, is a grand water trine. And the base of that is the moon in the 4th house. Not be surprised if family karma plays a big role in your life around the middle of the month. If things revolving around family and home become really, really important, somehow just popping up, or at the very least, pay attention to what your emotions are telling you. The emotional intelligence factor of this transit is huge. So just really listen to your instincts and your emotional body right around the 16th. That's not always easy for Aries to do, but because it's fiery, right? Likes to go, and sometimes harder to get into that subtle body, but subtle emotional field. So let's go up to the 21st to the 25th. We get up to there. What's really pretty neat about this is you've got Venus and Jupiter getting together in a conjunction. It's going to be beautiful to look at in the sky. It'll be really bright in the west after sunset. But it's landing in your 9th house: spirituality, religion, study of law, the pursuit of higher academic degrees. So Venus Jupiter in this house brings a lot of abundance. It brings fortunate connections socially into your life, through teachers, through people that share the same aspirations or spiritual values, through retreats or travel. So it's a really nice energy that it can also bring a little bit of that exotic, romantic, and even luxurious feeling into it. In the 9th house, that's not, it's not the world's best match. The 9th house is a bit more like let's learn and let's grow, not like, you know, let's spend $500 on a dinner or something. You know what I mean? So that Venus Jupiter extravagance in the ninth house might also be about the double standards around things like wealth, greed, money, and faith, or and teachers or education or something like that. Also, the other thing is that, you know, Venus and Jupiter together can also represent forgiveness, being generous, humanitarian, wanting to help others. So those are also things to look for around that time. Now on the 26th, right when we get to the 26th, then there's a new moon taking place in your ninth house. And this carries over the last full lunar cycle of 2019. And that's focused on your ninth house as well. So the end of the year, really pushing in on that house of spirituality, religion, maybe a trip that you're planning. There's a lot of spiritual growth happening there, maybe something to do with the legal system or courts or law, beliefs politically, but it's a high-minded moon cycle to end the year. So a lot of emphasis there in the ninth house. All right, so that's pretty good for Aries. Let's move forward to Leo. Here we go. Now let's back Leo up to the beginning of the month and start this over. All right, so when you get to Leo at the beginning of the month, what we're looking at is, again, new moon energy from late October. And for you, that's falling in your fourth house, which is the house of home and family. Now, as that's falling in the house of home and family, it is opposing Uranus in your career house, which means there's a really dynamic tension this month between home and career. Pretty simple, but the seeds of change, more intense, emotional, deep change happening in the home front, on the home front, relative to parents, family members, extended family, property, land, living situation, the things that act as our base or root of support in life. Sometimes that's even money, but it's foundational level things and change and transformation. Mercury's retrograde the first 3 weeks of the month, all the way until November 21st when it turns direct. That's a period of revision, sometimes delays or setbacks, a deeper inner process of work and reflection taking place around home, family, and roots, being spurred on by Uranus, the god of invention, disruption, revelation, awakening, in the 10th house of career. So there's also this kind of need to evolve, maybe professionally, in terms of what you're doing with your life, and it's intimately tied into, you know, home and family, ancestral karma, etc. Now, we'll go forward to visit the Scorpio-Taurus axis. And again, when we get through to about the 12th, the full moon is going to light up in your career house. Now, this is an exalted full moon in Taurus, which means it should be very pleasing or pleasant. It should bring nice things along with it. So I heard, actually, it was one of my students the other day who talked about Venus as pleasing and pleasant things. And, you know, that's such a spot on descriptive. So that I've been stealing that one from my student Kat in particular. It was a really awesome description of hers. Of course, William Lilly says something similar in Christian astrology, and it is something that you will hear people saying, but it's just the perfect adjective. The adjective for a full moon in your career house is pleasant, pleasing, good or fortunate things happening. Because Venus is everything that we like or that makes us feel happy, right? Venus is the things that we desire and that we enjoy, like your breakfast that you like. You've something you prefer for breakfast, right? So you like it. Full moon exalted in the sign of Taurus brings things that you like, generally speaking, or focus on the things that you want or desire, and trying to create some kind of stable situation based around your desires. That's the focus of the full moon on November 12th. So that one should be pretty good and give a little bit of a break from the intense, more Mars-ruled Scorpio energy happening in the house of home and family. Now, when you go forward to like the 21st, it's interesting because right around the 21st, Mercury turns direct. You can see it stationing right here. This is on the 20th. And then go forward to the 21st, turns direct, go forward to the 24th. And now you've got a really intense transit going on. Mars, god of war in its own sign, very powerful, opposing Uranus, god of revolution in the career house. So Mars, god of war in the house of home and family, opposing Uranus, god of sudden, disruptive, unexpected transformations and the desire for greater freedom in the career house. really a moment of breakthrough after a month of maybe kind of being consumed emotionally, maybe in an intense way, with these conflicts or changes happening around home and work. Boom, then there's this breakthrough moment. It's very cathartic. You have to be careful because it can be a little defiant and reckless, force the change kind of thing. And, a lot of times you try to force the change, you break something. So be careful about that. Now that's the Taurus Scorpio axis for the month. I wanted to go through all of that first and just give that to you. Let's go back to the beginning of the month. Between the 1st and the 5th, there's also a really intense dynamic going on between Mars and Pluto. So you've got Mars in Libra squaring Pluto in Capricorn. Now, this is happening between the 3rd and the 6th houses. Frankly, the 6th house square to Pluto, not pretty in this case. This is something you're really contending with this month, I think, for a lot of, for a lot of the Leos out there. 6th house was traditionally the house of accidents, injuries, misfortune, difficulties, etc. Mars in the 3rd house is reflecting that Mars is present in your immediate environment right now. It's not something you're channeling as much as it is something that's around you, like a house guest. In fact, the 3rd house was thought of as a place that had to do with the etiquette needed in order to host a god in your home. But it's like a visitor, like neighbors as well. So Mars is visiting right now and squaring Pluto in the house of misfortune. That's a little tough. You got to be careful about diplomatic or ethical challenges. You got to look at the potential for confrontation in relationships, or for dealing with some degree of really hard work that you're trying to do and you're trying to do nicely, Mars in Libra, but it also requires a bit of ruthlessness or just, some kind of perseverance to make it through. So also watch out for just a degree of mental intensity and passive aggressiveness between the 1st and the 5th. Now, moving forward from there, between the 11th and the 16th, a little broad range for this, we've got Venus in the sign of Sagittarius in your 5th house square to Neptune in Pisces in the 8th house. Neptune and Venus transit, really nice, right? Venus-Neptune will refer to the romantic and the timeless, love and subtlety, the imaginative or invisible, and the lovely or pleasing. This kind of combination most people like. Between the 5th and the 8th house is very tempting and kind of seductive. 5th house, house of pleasure, traditionally the joy of Venus. It's related to anything we do for pleasure, including things that are sensual and artistic, things that are colorful and beautiful, things also that are procreative, like sex and children. But the 8th house, right, is a bit more seductive and complicated. It grants a lot of blessings, but often through misfortune or difficulties or shadows or loss or fear. So what's this like? This looks like a siren, right? This has the feeling of like the temptation of the siren song, like whatever's calling to us right now. It may be really beautiful, very dangerous, even though we don't see it, because it might be quite intoxicating. This can also have to do, frankly, with different things like over drinking or overspending. So be careful of that too. Also be careful of, things that are seductive in any realm, something that's seductive that you shouldn't be doing. The flip side of this is the potential for there to be abundance coming through love and relationships, something kind of uplifting, awe-inspiring, amazing, unexpectedly beautiful and helpful coming through, and maybe through difficulty. Maybe there's a silver lining somehow coming through right now. Or maybe, again, someone else in a relationship is helping you with something or giving something. Just be careful. Again, it might come with a little bit of a price tag you don't see at first. So there's that. Now, later in the month, when we get into the 16th, right after the Neptune moon transit, or excuse me, the Venus-Neptune transit, there is a grand water trine coming through. See that on the 16th. It's a really emotional, watery time. And for you, a lot of this is, again, anchored in your 4th house of home and family, and just visiting some complicated themes around that with the moon in the 12th. Yeah, you're going to, this is a time to really look carefully at what's going on around home, parents, family, and to be really real and honest. At the same time, it may be that your intuition has to speak a little right now. Something could be pulling at you emotionally. You might not understand rationally right away. So listen to what your emotions are telling you. Now, when we go forward to the 21st to the 25th, This is probably the most exciting transit of the month for everybody. Venus-Jupiter conjunction. I've said this for everybody. Go check it out in the sky after sunset. It's going to be awesome. Venus-Jupiter conjunction in your 5th house, the house of good fortune. That looks like a party. It looks like fun. It looks like joy and pleasure. Maybe something that's even uplifting, moral, good, true, but also beautiful and enjoyable. When the two get together, they can have expensive taste. They can go overboard. They can, it's like looking at a huge, beautiful spread of food, or if you ever saw the Christmas Carol, the what is it? The Ghost of Christmas Present. He's got the cornucopia and it's just glowing with gold. Remember, the present is the most abundant and bountiful thing that we have. And so it's easy to get caught up in visions of and delusions of grandeur with Venus Jupiter. That's the beware here. But otherwise, like, it does bring anything from opulence to fame, wealth, beauty, good connections, happiness and abundance, harmony and truth. Some good things there that can come along. And in the 5th house, it might be really creative. It's a house that's all about pleasure and joy. It might be quite romantic. I like this for you right now because on the 26th, there's a new moon also happening in your 5th house, which suggests that the entire final lunar cycle of the year is really keyed in on your creative life. So I think that's really exciting. It's a house of, if you have kids, if you're thinking of getting pregnant, that could also be a real source of joy around those kind of topics right now as well. Okay, so let's move into our last sign of the fire trifecta, which is Sagittarius. Okay, we just talked about Sagittarius, so now we're going to put you on the ascendant and tell you about your month. Let's go back to the beginning of the month to get started here. Okay, here we go. Now, again, where's the new moon? On October 27th, fell in your 12th house. It was opposite Uranus and Taurus in your 6th house. 12th and 6th houses are not easy. Geminis and Sagittarians have it a bit difficult this month because of this. You have the axis that was called evil spirit and bad fortune. Not fun. Now, there's a lot of people with 12th house and 6th house energy that work for others, that work in a healing profession, or that work with people who are down on their luck, so to speak. Doctors, nurses, surgeons, social workers, therapists, counselors, healers, mediators, etc. But this is because the 12th and 6th houses are places of conflict and difficulty. So the 6th house, called the joy of Mars, a place of conflict and misfortune, just the challenge of life. That's Mars. Mars is thought of as war and conflict, but Mars is also just the frustration of being alive and having to deal, like every day you have to deal with something. It could be something as stupid as someone, cutting in front of you in traffic, or it could be something as annoying as getting a fender bender and having to not have a car for a few days, right? But that's the 6th house. The 6th house is also about work, and it's also about suffering and sickness. It can also be about giving ourselves in work or some kind of sacrifice or element of service that is involved, because Mars is also the martyr in traditional astrology, which has to do with the desire to be self-sacrificing. That's also a part of the 6th house. 12th house, a place of the evil spirit. It just means any influence that has a tendency to pull you off track. So self-destructiveness, prison, paying time for crimes, etc., losing your mind, losing your center, losing your sanity. But also the 12th house has a lot to do with getting off track or being on the outside. It's related to shipwreck and getting lost or wandering or being alone or in exile. It's related to heretics, but also anyone or anything that sort of doesn't fit in, that's adrift or that's a black sheep or a loner or something like that, as well as isolation, loneliness, and imprisonment. So these are heavy houses to be working through this month. If it feels a little angsty and existential, if you're working through the slog of something that's just frankly a little difficult, whether it's at work, it could be in any number of other areas in your life, but it's a grind this month. That's the bottom line. Their change is coming, big change is coming, but these houses were called metacosmios. They're liminal spaces. They're spaces that reflect being in an in-between stage, or a place of uncertainty, or toiling or working through something. Maybe something really positive is coming on the other end, but you do got to watch for that. Mercury's retrograde the first 3 weeks of the month in the 12th house, amplifying everything I just said, just adds to it. Mercury in that house can also have you exploring things like healthy communication versus unhealthy communication. Same thing with your thoughts or emotions. Be careful of gossip and drama behind people's backs. But otherwise, it's also a great time to just do investigative research into something abnormal or different, or into your own, kind of unconscious, maybe even through dreams. Okay. Now, continuing with the Scorpio-Taurus axis, if we run forward in the month, on the 12th, we're going to see a full moon in the sign of Taurus in your 6th house. Now, that is an exalted moon in the sign of Venus, which should mean that there is some degree of good fortune or some stabilizing presence that's coming through around the 6th, around the 12th in the 6th house, but it's still coming through the 6th house. So I would read that as some kind of silver lining in maybe what is otherwise a more challenging month, working through something. Something that comes in to help, or something that temporarily grants some feeling of sanity or stability. And I'm telling you, like Sagittarius and Geminis, they're, like I said, you're grinding this month. So the full moon should feel good, as it's an exalted full moon. At any rate, you may, it's kind of maybe one of those moments where like the end is in sight or something like that too, and you're just feeling lifted. Now you go forward to the 21st. When we get to the 21st, that's when Mercury turns direct. Start feeling a turnaround there. Here's Mercury right there. And then on the 20th, excuse my awful drawing skills. And then we go forward to the 24th. And on the 24th, you've got this ninja kick from Mars to Uranus. That's creating a breakthrough that you've probably been looking for, but you need to be really careful that you're not trying to escape out of the difficulty of something by doing something really reckless and impulsive. It's like you're putting together a piece of furniture from IKEA and you're so close to being done, and there's this one piece that won't fit, and you're tempted to just jam it in, and then when you do, it breaks the whole thing. Be careful of that. Not specifically the IKEA furniture. Maybe the IKEA furniture part will go well for you if you're buying IKEA furniture. But at any rate, okay, where are we going? So that's the Scorpio-Taurus axis for the month. If we go back to the beginning of the month, really interesting, between the 1st and the 5th, you've got Mars in the sign of Libra making a square to Pluto in the sign of Capricorn from the 11th to the 2nd house. The 11th house, Mars, is showing up as the god of war, conflict, courage, action, in the house of friends and groups, or allies and benefactors. And it's square to Pluto in the house of money and finances. Is there some kind of change happening socially or professionally? Are you meeting allies, colleagues, finding resources in groups of people that are helping you address or deal with something financially? Are you spending money on something to be a part of something new? Are you being asked to pool your resources into something with others? Are you dealing with some kind of ethical or moral situation that could result in, some kind of financial penalty or some kind of financial debt or fee? Are you spending something on your friends? These are all questions. Can be pretty intense, Mars and Pluto. So watch for the potential for conflicts in relationships and friends. Try not to get in between any friends if you can as well, because that might be a temptation. Mars in Libra loves to mediate. So at any rate, that's what we have going on the first 5 days of the month with Mars and Pluto. Maybe a pretty dynamic and or moment of change or transformation around money and finances too, with Pluto, of course, in the 2nd house. Now, when we go forward to the 11th through the 16th, this is arguably, one of the better transits of the month. It is Venus's square to Neptune. This is happening between your 1st and 4th houses. Place that has to do with identity. You're really channeling Venus right now, you could say. You've been having your own home ruling planet, Jupiter, in your home sign for a year. It's been a time of personal growth and expansion, you could say. But Venus is square to Neptune in the 4th house of home, family, parents, roots, land, foundations. Now, Venus-Neptune, really romantic, put together the beautiful along with the subtle, the romantic along with the imaginative, even the transcendental along with the sensual or sexual. Those energies together people generally like. So there's some connection maybe of these kind of timeless, romantic, subtle, spiritual themes that are important for you right now. May have something to do with your living space, your home, your land, even things that are happening around relationships in your family. That's a possibility. The other thing, though, that you have to be careful of is Venus and Neptune tend to tempt us into things that aren't real. So what's the temptation right now? It could be that you're being tempted to, like, oh, I could really see myself in this house, super wealthy house you can't afford. You're going to live outside of your means if you do so. So be careful of the things that tempt you to take on an identity of, that's maybe not really you. Who are you at the roots? That might be a good question to ask right now. In being real, not trying to inflate or prove yourself or validate yourself, just being real and present and honest. Who am I? Where do I come from? What's real and what gives me a ground to stand on? What gives me substantive support in this life? Be careful that it's not, clouds and illusions, basically. But otherwise, this could also be, again, a time of real joy and potential abundance and more of a kind of timeless, happy feeling related to home and family right now. So going forward from there, on the 16th, Grand Water Trine comes through. Very brief, but again, it is anchored around the moon in Cancer in the 8th house. May have something to do around shared assets, resources, possessions, inheritance, the topic sometimes of death or change around family or home or mothers or parenting. Those could be big issues right around the 16th. Regardless, though, your emotions will speak loudly around this time if you're listening to them. So just really listen to the wisdom of the body and the emotions around the 16th. Next, we go forward from like the 21st to the 25th. And I love this transit. It's another really fun one. Venus and Jupiter conjoined. Said this for every sign. Go check it out in the sky. It should be really, really beautiful. And then also Venus, Jupiter bring abundance. This is your first house. You should be feeling pretty good, maybe looking pretty good, receiving good things, being liked or noticed. It's just you're sort of channeling Venus, Neptune Venus, Jupiter in your first house right now. You might be feeling really positive and optimistic. Again, watch for inflation, grandiosity, illusions of grandeur, going overboard, too rich, too much of something, a little bit of that. And being a little cocky and inflated. Be careful of that as well in your first house. But this energy is followed by a new moon on the 26th, which is happening in your home sign. A lot of emphasis on a brand new beginning, the inception of something new, a new period, a new moment, a new era, a new diet, a change of wardrobe. It's very personal in the first house, and it represents something very new, probably pretty positive given that Venus and Jupiter are toning this new moon, having just conjoined. But the theme of money is going to continue to, the theme of money is going to be a big theme as Jupiter continues to move out of Sagittarius and into Capricorn in December. So we'll be revisiting that for sure. Okay, that's what I've got for the fire signs. I hope that you guys have a really great month of November. Stay tuned. I've got lots of cool stuff coming up on my channel this month. And share your comments. Tell me how things are going. Tell me how the transits play out. Be sure to check back in on them as the month goes on. They'll help you. Otherwise, you forget them. And it's good to come back. So I will look forward to those stories that you guys have. And I'll see you guys next month in December for another round of forecasts. Take care. Bye.